are happy to be here today with our Bubonicon 52 Take 2 guest of honor, Keith R.A. DeCandido. We are so ecstatic to be able to have him back virtually this year, and also to announce that he will be one of our guests of honor in 2022 at Bubonicon 53. All right, so Keith was born and raised in New York City with a family of librarians, which according to his bio pretty much explains everything. We may have to ask him later what exactly everything means. He's very well known for having written more than 50 novels, short stories, nonfiction, ebooks, comics, and blog entries, especially various media tie-in worlds, and especially Star Trek, Supernatural, Buffy, Stargate, and Doctor Who. His next novel that should be out is another one in his Precinct series, Phoenix Precinct. So join me in welcoming Keith R.A. DeCandido.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me back for the latest virtual version of this con, and I'm really looking forward to finally actually making it there next year. I'm going to be reading from my latest book to come out, which is part of the Systema Paradoxa series, which is a series of books about cryptids. And my particular one is about the Jersey Devil. And it takes place in the same universe as my Adventures of Brom Gold urban fantasy series, which includes the novel A Furnace Sealed, which came out in 2019, as well as the forthcoming Feet of Clay, which I hope will be out early next year, along with Phoenix Precinct. This opening bit that I'm going to read involves a courser named Valentina Perron. Courser in this universe is basically a supernatural hunter for hire. And she has an office in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and she has just been approached by Rocco Amalfitano, who is the head of security for one of the casinos in Atlantic City. He's just come into her office where Valentina is with her apprentice, Sarah L. Gwyndy. So here we go. From All the Way House, the Systema Paradoxa novel by me, Keith R.A. DeCandido, currently available from the Neo Paradoxa imprint of eSpec Books. Always a pleasure, Rocco. What can I do for you? Rocco, however, was staring at Sarah. Who's this? Oh, sorry. Rocco Amalfitano, head of security for Atlantic Resorts Casino and Hotel. This is my apprentice, Sarah L. Gwyndy. Rocco turned to stare confusedly at Valentina. You got an apprentice? That's like a thing? How do you think we get new courses? The hell do I know? Maybe you grow them in a lab. Valentina chuckled and indicated the guest chair that faced her desk. Have a seat, Rocco. Tell me what you need. As he sat down, Rocco pulled a smartphone out of his trench coat pocket. We got a thing on the beach. Clients are freaking out. I need you to get it the hell off the beach before the bosses find out. Sarah asked, how does anybody even know it's there? What do you mean? Rocco asked. Who would be going on the beach in this weather? Rolling his eyes, Rocco said, somebody's always on the beach. We could have 10 feet of snow, and somebody would be on the beach. He had been fondling the screen of his phone. Finally, seeming to find what he needed, he handed the phone to Valentina. Taking the phone, she stared at the image. A sandy beach dotted with shells in the foreground, breaking waves of blue-green water in the background, and right where the two met, a dark green scaled creature that either had 2 arms and 2 legs, or 4 legs, it was hard to tell at that angle, with a large round head, tiny recessed eyes, and a snout that looked vaguely fish-like. That's the only picture we got, but at least 3 clients have seen it. They're saying it's the Jersey Devil, if you can believe that garbage. Valentina handed the phone to Sarah so she could get a look at it. Oh, come on, Rocco, you don't think the Jersey Devil's real? Maybe it is and maybe it ain't, but I ain't never seen it. And I've seen some stuff. Why do you think I keep coming back here? Shrugging, Valentina said, my charm and good looks. Rocco snorted. Well, you are pretty good looking for a crazy courser lady. Sarah handed the phone back to Rocco. Can you email us the picture, please, Mr. Amalfitano? Absolutely. And hey, call me Rocco. Mr. Amalfitano is what people call me when they got a problem. And it gets me all nervous. But I'm the one with the problem. So call me Rocco. Rocco started fondling the phone screen again, and then asked Valentina, same email address as last time? Valentina nodded. Excuse me. Tapping the phone screen with a flourish, Rocco said, "Sent," and put the phone back in his pocket. "You know what that thing is?" "I got a few ideas," Valentina said. "But don't worry. I'll have it off the beach and out of your hair within 24 hours. "Okay, great. So I don't got to pay the usual rate for this, right? I mean, it's the off season." With a sigh, Valentina then engaged in her least favorite aspect of this job, haggling. It took about a minute and a half for her to convince Rocco that coursers didn't have an off season, even if casinos did, and for him to agree to her usual payment rate, or more accurately, her usual rate for the casinos, which was about 20% higher than it was for anyone else, as the casinos could damn well afford it. It was Valentina's way of making up for how the casinos themselves overcharged for so much. After that, Rocco took his leave. As soon as the door closed, Valentina crossed herself again. Jesu Giuseppe Mari, every damn time. "He always tries to talk down the price?" Sarah asked. "Yeah. If I charged twice as much, it wouldn't be a hell of a lot more than a damn rounding error in the casino's budget. But no, he's got a nickel and dime me, and he pulls it every single time he hires me." Valentina blew out a breath. "Come on, we got to take a trip up to the Pine Barrens." That brought Sarah up short. "Excuse me? Aren't we going to the beach? Maybe get some tracks, try to figure out what it is?" "Oh, I already know what it is. It's a mugwump." Sarah frowned. "Then why didn't you tell Mr. Amalfitano that?" Chuckling as she got up from her chair, Valentina said, "He said to call him Rocco, remember?" "I prefer to be formal with our clients," Sarah said primly. "Besides, I hear that name and I expect him to be accompanied by a talking moose named Bullwinkle." "That's Rocky, not Rocco. Give me a sec." Valentina went back to use the bathroom. When she was done, she came out and said, "You should use it too. We got us about an hour drive." "I'm fine, and you didn't answer my question." They moved toward the door, Valentina grabbing her coat and switching the light off. "Because this ain't just any mugwump. I'm pretty sure it's a mugwump that I know, and he really shouldn't be out like that." "So why are we going to the Pine Barrens?" Valentina smiled. "You'll see when we get there." After locking up the storefront, they went to where Valentina had parked her red Equinox. There was still an hour and 40 minutes left on the meter, but there was no sense in wasting time. She beeped the vehicle unlocked and then climbed up into the SUV. As usual, she had to readjust the rearview mirror. Somehow it always crept back up to a higher angle when she needed it lower so her 5'1" frame could actually see into it. Navigating the Equinox through downtown until she got to the AC Expressway, she zipped westward down that highway, the vehicle's sound system playing a satellite radio channel dedicated entirely to the works of Bruce Springsteen. As they went past the interchange with Route 40, Valentina turned the music down a bit. "I ever tell you the history of what we've been called?" "We haven't always been called coursers?" "Nope." "Please don't tell me that we had an even more obscure name." Laughing, Valentina said, "No, we used to be called Slayers. Matter of fact, we were called that for centuries, but then a TV show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer happened in the 90s. All of a sudden, Slayer meant short blonde chick. Nobody took us seriously. So we changed it to Hunters, then Supernatural became a thing. Plus, honestly, nobody was really happy with either name. We don't just kill monsters, though I'm guessing we probably used to a lot more back then. Plus, of course, the term hunter conjures images of overweight white men in flannel and denim, wearing ball caps and carrying rifles to shoot innocent deer." Valentina shuddered. "Yeah." "What's wrong?" Sarah asked. Sorry, just some bad memories." Out of the corner of her eye, Valentina could see that Sarah was looking at her with a querying expression, which made it clear that her apprentice wasn't going to leave it at that, nor would take none of your business for an answer. I got family out in Western Pennsylvania on my mom's side. We used to go visit, me and my brothers." "You have brothers?" "Yeah, Niccolo, who's older, and Antonio's younger. Anyhow, Uncle Rodney, he was Aunt Annie's husband, used to love to go hunting. And at one time, we were dumb enough to take our trip right when hunting season started. So Rodney dragged our asses out at the crack of dawn one Saturday morning. Nicky and Tony loved it. I hated every damn second of it." She smirked. "It's probably why I hate weapons so much." "Why coursers, then?" "It's kind of a hunting term. It's from the Middle Ages, I think. I don't know. But it's a unique name, at least." "Because no one knows what it is." Grinning, Valentina said, "It's us." Sarah just stared at her, which Valentina studiously ignored as she merged onto the northbound Garden State Parkway. After several seconds, Sarah folded her arms, let out a dramatic sigh, and said, "I still say it's a stupid name. Yeah, I know you say it's a stupid name. Want to know how I know you say it's a stupid name? You keep saying it. I get it, but it's the name we got. And there's like thousands of us who still use it. Fine. Valentina only didn't roll her eyes because she was operating a motor vehicle. She turned Springsteen back up as she drove north, eventually getting off at exit 58 for Route 539 north. Within an hour of departing Atlantic City, they were bouncing down a glorified dirt road. Sarah was gripping the so-called Jesus bar above the passenger side door for dear life. Sarah's voice was shaky as she cried out, "I thought this was supposed to be an off-road vehicle!" Valentina focused on the road ahead, grateful that it was still daylight, even more grateful that it hadn't snowed recently. "It is. This is way off-road. I suggest you add the cost of the new suspension you'll need to the expenses portion of the invoice you send to Mr. Amalfitano." "You don't gotta shout," Valentina muttered, though the sound system was also playing Badlands very loudly as they careened down the dirt path. Finally, after driving around a large boulder embedded in the road, she saw their destination. "Here we go." She brought the Equinox to a halt just in front of a large wooden structure, pulling alongside a very old Ford LTD station wagon with a bumper sticker that read, "My other ride is a Zamboni." Sarah was now staring out the windshield, still gripping the Jesus bar despite the vehicle having come to a stop. "You've brought me to a log cabin." "Yep. Though I suppose that's not really a cabin, is it?" Valentina grinned at her apprentice's shocked look of abject confusion. "No. Well, the word cabin implies something small. That place is huge, though I will grant that it is made out of logs." Valentina shut the ignition off and got out of the SUV. Sarah did likewise a moment later, continuing to stare at the three-story wooden structure. Well, truly it was 4 stories, but the attic level was tiny under the slanted roof, though Valentina knew that Nuyet liked it up there when it was quiet and warm and dark. There was also a wraparound porch on the 3rd story. On a less frigid day, one of the cabin's occupants would no doubt have been lounging out there. Today, though, the fireplace in the downstairs living room was probably going full bore. Sarah was still staring as Valentina walked up to the front door and grasped the ornate dragon head-shaped wrought iron door knocker in the center. She knocked 3 times, the thumping of the dragon's chin against the iron plate nailed to the door echoing through the barrens. Valentina looked down and smiled at the familiar welcome mat in front of the door. It was inscribed with the words, "Just so you know, it's basically a zoo in here." Around the words were impressions of paws, hooves, chicken feet, and the like. After a few moments, the door opened to reveal a tall, winged creature. The wings in question were leather and lowered as far as behind her back as possible. 2 horns protruded from the top of her head, pointing up and back, while her long face ended in a snout that pointed down and forward, her mouth filled with sharp teeth. She had opened the door with a 5-fingered hand, each finger ending in a long, pointed talon. The creature's skin was of a similar leathery quality to that of the wings, with tapered bits around the sides of her head, at her elbows, and at 1 or 2 other places on her person. A long, thick tail curled behind her, resting on the floor, and her legs bent back at the knee, with the hocks coming straight down to the floor, ending in tail-end toes. What amused Valentina most was the polka dot apron the creature wore, with the words "Kiss the Cook" emblazoned on the front. In a deep hissing voice that sounded like a truck driving over a glass bottle, the creature said, "Miss Perrone, what brings you here? Who is this?" Valentina looked over at her apprentice, who stood with her mouth agape. Is that Quinque Tredesum? This is my apprentice, Sarah Elguindi. Sarah, this is Quinque, better known to most folks as the Jersey Devil." Quinque hissed. "Not a popular appellation in this house, Miss Perrone. You know that." Sarah whirled on Valentina. "You said the Jersey Devil isn't real." "When did I say that?" "This morning, to Mr. Amalfitano." "I didn't either. What I said was, come on, Rocco, you don't think the Jersey Devil's real." Folding her arms, Sarah said, "Your phrasing implied that there was no such thing as the Jersey Devil. That's what I wanted Rocco to think. Betterine only knows about what he's come across, not what he ain't come across. There's enough crazy in it." Putting her taloned hands on her leathery apron-covered hips, Quinque asked, "Is there any need for me to be a part of this conversation?" "Actually, we'd like to come in, if we can, Quinque. It's about Etienne." "Who's Etienne?" Sarah asked. Quinque gave another hiss. I suppose you should come inside. Wipe your feet, please. Inside was a large living room type area with a high 2-story ceiling, but also a balcony, a wooden staircase to the right leading up to it. Past the staircase was the dining room, and beyond that was the kitchen. Opposite the front door on the far side of the living room was a fireplace, which was indeed going at full bore. Since the last time Valentina had been here, they'd upgraded from a 45-inch television to an 85-inch, which hung on the wall right over the fireplace and currently showing a sports network giving highlights of the previous night's hockey games. Valentina was hoping there'd be news of the Jersey Devils, just for the irony, but instead they were discussing the previous night's game between the Philadelphia Flyers and the Carolina Hurricanes. There was a large couch between the door and the fireplace TV, facing the latter, and Valentina saw a large white furred creature on one end of it, an even larger orange furred creature on the other side, with a more average-sized green-scaled being in the middle. Perpendicular to the couch was a stool, on which sat a skinny, white-skinned figure with large insect wings protruding from his back. A giant spider hung from a web attached to the underside of the balcony, and what looked like a malisaur was walking across the balcony, entering one of the upper rooms. Sarah barely made it through the doorway before she stopped short. What is this place? My home, Quinque said. The figure on the stool flew over to the front door. In a whispery voice, he asked, "May I take your coats?" "Thanks, Jimmy." Valentina shrugged out of her down coat and then handed it to the flying man. "How's Maria doing?" "She's still in Hawaii. She won't come back until spring at the earliest." Grinning, Valentina said, "Still allergic to winter, huh?" "So it would seem," Jimmy said in a long-suffering tone. Sarah handed Jimmy her coat also. "Thank you," she muttered. Jimmy flew off to hang them up. Quinque started moving toward the staircase. "Come with me to the kitchen, please. You may assist me in getting lunch ready." "Be happy to," Valentina said as they followed Quinque past the staircase. Sarah turned to Valentina as they walked. "You know all these monsters?" "They ain't monsters, Sarah. They're people." "That's a Sasquatch, a Chupacabra, a Yeti, and a giant spider watching hockey highlights with an albino with moth wings, plus I don't know what that was on the balcony." They went through the dining room and into the long, wide kitchen area. Both walls were lined with cabinets, and there was a ton of counter space, in addition to 2 ovens, a 5-burner electric stove, one burner of which bore a large pot with a cover slightly askew, 2 microwaves, a dishwasher, and a huge sink. Valentina smelled the distinctive aroma of chicken and spices that meant that Quinque was making chicken stock. "The guy on the balcony was Izzy," she said to Sarah. "He's a Mokale Mbembe." Quinque took off the lid off the soup and grabbed a wooden spoon off the counter to stir it. "He prefers to be called Isembi, ever since that argument with Eleutheria." Valentina rolled her eyes. "Is Ellie back on that nicknames are fascist kick?" Another hiss from Quinque as she replaced the lid, again leaving it slightly askew. "Which is why she prefers not to be called Ellie. Yes." Not wanting to get into that argument again, especially with Ellie not even in the room, Valentina instead sniffed the air, permeated as it was with the delightful odors of the chicken stock. She recognized a particular spice and asked, "Did you finally remember to put savory in the soup?" "Yes, you were right, Miss Perron. It makes the soup much better. I've only been telling you that 1,000 times." "Indeed." Quinque turned to look at Sarah. The other 4 in the living room watching that execrable sports channel are Walter, Armando, Nuklik, and Nuyet. Upstairs, along with Isembi, are Eleutheria, Unish, and Billy Bob. Valentina frowned, not recognizing one of the names. Walter was the Sasquatch, Armando the Chupacabra, Nukalik the Yeti, and Nuyet the big spider, while Billy Bob was a howler and Eleutheria was a bunyip. "Who's Munish?" "An intelligent primate who was stuck in a zoo in New Delhi. A courser there was able to arrange to have him brought here." "Was it Abaya Batra?" Quinque shook her head. "No, it was a male courser." Abaya was the only courser Valentina knew from India. "Oh, I'm glad Munish found a home here." Sarah was standing with her arms folded again. "So this is a sanctuary?" "Yes," Quinque said. "You used the word monster earlier, Ms. Elquindi, but that term is not applicable to anyone who lives in my house. No one here has ever willingly harmed another soul except in extreme self-defense." "Or what they claim is self-defense," Sarah muttered. "Excuse me?" "You gotta forgive my apprentice," Valentina said quickly. "I do not believe I have to do so at all, Miss Perron. Her family was killed by an Almiraj, who claimed he did it in self-defense. She's an apprentice courser, she's still learning, but she got reason to be suspicious and cynical, you know?" Sounding much more contrite, Sarah added, "Having said that, I understand how easy it is to judge someone by appearances. I was 4 years old when the Twin Towers were destroyed in 2001, and I grew up in the time after that seeing people judge me solely because of this. She pointed at her head, or more specifically at the hijab that covered all but her face. I apologize, Mr. Dessen, for the use of the word monster to describe your charges. Quinque opened her arms in a conciliatory gesture. Apology accepted, Ms. Elquindi. Sarah bowed her head. Turning to Valentina, Quinque said, the stock is almost ready. I must start the pasta. Please, tell me what you can of Etienne. One of the hotels in Atlantic City hired us to get rid of something that some tourists saw on the beach. She took her smartphone out of her jeans pocket. They got a pic, and it sure looks like Etienne. Calling up the picture in question, she held the phone display out toward Quinque. Quinque placed the water-filled pot on the stove and turned the burner on. That is indeed Etienne. He has been missing for a day, but he sometimes goes for long walks in the barrens. I discourage the practice, but there are times when we suffer from cabin fever and must leave the confines of these wooden walls. Quinque let out a very long hiss. However, Etienne knows he is not to leave the Pine Barrens. Please, Ms. Perron, I would be very grateful if you returned him home. That was always going to be the plan once I made sure it was really him. Thank you. Would you like to stay for lunch? Quinque went to another cabinet to remove a bag of imported Italian rigatoni as she asked the question. It almost physically hurt Valentina to say, I'm sorry, we can't, given how she'd been smelling how heavenly the soup was since they came into the kitchen, and that she was the one who'd recommended the imported pasta to Quinque. Getting here and back is already eaten 2 hours into the time we need to get Etienne off the beach, and the client wants us to move our butts. Can you save me a little? I'll take it when we bring Etienne back. Very well. Quinque looked back at Sarah. Enough for two? Sarah shook her head. I do not consume meat, but thank you for the offer. Quinque nodded in understanding, and then led them back into the living room. James, will you please get our guests' coats? Quinque asked. Nodding, Jimmy flew toward the back of the cabin. And I'll leave it at that. They go off from there. If you want to find out what happens next, you can pick up All the Way House, which is part of the Systema Paradoxa series from Eastbeck Books. It is available at finer online book dealers everywhere. And hope you enjoy it. There's lots of other books in the series as well, featuring a whole bunch of different cryptids of various kinds, not just the Jersey Devil. So that's my story.
Yay. Thank you.
Hey, so I was just wondering, what else do you have coming out in the next few months? Because you're pretty darn prolific.
Yeah, the next thing of mine that's coming out is another short story that's actually in the same setting as what I just read, but with a different courser named Yolanda Rodriguez that takes place in Upper Manhattan. It's in an anthology, also from Eastbeck Books, called Devilish and Divine, which is stories about angels and demons. And I've got a story in there called Unguarded. Beyond that, the schedule's kind of up in the air, and the next thing I've got that's coming out is something I can't talk about because I signed a non-disclosure agreement. It's a comic book that I'm doing for Tokyo Pop,
Cool.
which is going to be a tie-in, but I can't say what it is just yet. I am working hard on. There's another project I'm doing that hasn't been announced yet either. It's going to be announced in September. It's a nonfiction project. And then I'm working on, as I said, Feet of Clay and Phoenix Precinct, which I'm hoping to have out in early 2022. Also, early in 2022, I'm going to have the next collection of Tales of Cassie Zukov, Weirdness Magnet, which is my cycle of urban fantasy stories set in Key West, Florida. The first collection was called Ragnarok and Roll, which came out in 2013. I finally have enough stories in that cycle to do a second collection, which is going to be called Ragnarok in a Hard Place. And that should also be out from Plus One Press in 2022, if all goes well.
So you've been doing a lot of work for Tor.com.
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, I know the Voyager rewatch is getting relatively close to the end. So what do you have coming up next for them?
I'm going to be jumping into Enterprise after that. I've already done rewatches of all the previous Trek series. I did the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine. I'm as you said, almost done with Voyager. I have also been reviewing every episode of the shows, the Secret Hideout shows on Paramount Plus, including all of Discovery, Short Treks, Picard, and Lower Decks. And I'm going to be reviewing Prodigy and Strange New Worlds when they hit, as well as the next seasons of Lower Decks and Picard and Discovery and so on. So at this point, it would be ridiculous not to cover Enterprise because I've already covered everything else. If I didn't do a rewatch of Enterprise, it would leave this unfortunate gap in the middle there. And so I may as well be completist. And so I'm gonna once I'm done with Voyager and I hit Endgame, I'm gonna pick up with Enterprise. Also for Tor.com, I have been periodically, every 6 months or so, I have been reviving my 4-color to 35mm feature, the Great Superhero Movie Rewatch, which is writes about all the live action movies based on superhero comics. And those I caught up to real. I started that feature in 2017, and I caught up to real time in early 2020. But there have been more movies since then. So every 6 months or so, I revisit the feature, and look at what's been out in the previous 6 months. So yeah. So that's coming up from them, and I'm writing. I write other things for them here and there, reviews of things. And
thank you so much for joining us today, and we're really looking forward to finally having you in Albuquerque in 2022.
It would be nice. One other thing you asked what was coming up, and I forgot to mention also, I do have a Patreon, and there's always new stuff there. I've been writing vignettes featuring my original characters. I do movie and TV reviews on my Patreon. I post cat pictures as well, and excerpts from my works in progress and such. So that's another source of new material. There's always new stuff happening there. So
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Keith. Appreciate it.
thank you.